Although Martha Freeman's newest book for young readers received great reviews, librarians from across the country have either removed The Trouble with Babies from shelves or declined to buy the book. It seems a brief passage about two gay fathers raised the possibility of a public backlash. We'll talk about that and more. Let's take note with Martha Freeman, a children's author who lives in State College. Her newest book, The Trouble with Babies, was published by Holiday House. Also with us is Stephen Herb, director of the Pennsylvania Center for the Book and past chair of the American Library Association's Office of Intellectual Freedom. Thank you both so much for joining us. If you could begin, The Trouble with Babies, in some ways I guess could be dubbed the trouble with gay characters. Tell us about this new book and the controversy that it stirred.
Well, it's turned out to be much more troublesome than I ever anticipated. I wrote this innocent little story. It's a continuation of the story of Holly. Holly's a girl who lives in San Francisco. She's in 4th grade, and she has 4 cats who are really the raison d'etre for the book. I mean, I thought, you know, cute book about a little girl and cats. Holly moves into a new neighborhood, and next door is a boy named Javier, who she calls Dr. X. And because Dr. X is like one of these boy genius types. And Dr. X is building some kind of bizarre thing in the backyard, and Holly wonders, what in the world is this? Well, it turns out when we get to the dreaded page 52 that Dr. X has 2 dads. She doesn't have, there's not a mom in the picture. And Holly doesn't get this, oh, a dad and a stepdad. She figures, you know, sure, I know all about that. But as she starts to think about it and as she quizzes him, she finds out, oh, they're partners. I see, fine. And on we go. And that's really, Javier is a character throughout the book, and the 2 dads are too. But there's the one page where it's actually said the word gay, as Holly strives to understand what the deal is with this boy and his 2 fathers.
Now, the result of that page 52 is that librarians across the country, who to a certain extent are really gatekeepers in terms of what ends up on shelves and what young readers are exposed to, the buzz, it sounds like it quickly circulated.
Well, I think what happens is there are reviews, of course, of books, and really I didn't even notice this at the time or grasp the significance, but every review mentioned that there was an alternative lifestyle issue, and actually the reviews all said it in a rather, I thought, positive way, just a by the by way, oh, it's a depiction of a different kind of a family. But I think it, to some extent, for librarians who must be sensitive to this kind of thing in their own communities, they picked up on that and said, uh-oh, you know, do I need this headache? And I'm totally behind librarians. I can understand that point of view. They've just fought Harry Potter. You know, they didn't have any choice on that one. They had to fight for that. On my little book, I think it was just easier to say, you know, I've got limited money. Is this a book I absolutely have to have in my library? Well, you know, why would I fight that battle for this book?
Now, the setting for this book, Holly, we should mention, lives in San Francisco.
Correct.
So this alternative lifestyle may not be also so surprising. Now, Martha mentioned something very interesting. School librarians did have to go to battle to keep Harry Potter on their books, on their shelves.
Yeah, every year there's some school or some library somewhere that has to fight for books. But I appreciate Martha being so very supportive of librarians, but my position is that librarians shouldn't allow something like that to stand in the way. If anything, in this day and age where Will and Grace is on in prime time and Queer Eye for the straight guy is acceptable family fare, I just think that the time has come to not allow children's books, for especially chapter books, to have some passing reference to what every neighborhood has to be a stop measure on purchasing a book. It's too bad, really, and in some ways it's the kind of thing where art is being held up by the smallest common denominator again, and in the American Library Association we're constantly fighting that. That's why there's Banned Books Week every September. That's why we have the 100 most banned books of the last decade, the 100 most banned books of the year. We try to shine a spotlight on the fact that you know, Martha in good conscience just created some nice characters and is advancing a story, and she's not advocating an alternative lifestyle, even if she were.
But that's exactly what people are saying, is that she's advancing an agenda, a homosexual agenda.
But then that would be, so we have a homeless person in a book and we're what? You know, advancing that? I mean, it's just, that is something that I think people grasp at as a way of trying to paint the world the way they would like to see it. And schools, of course, are a mixed bag because school libraries are supporting a curriculum. It's always a little bit trickier with schools, but in public libraries, there shouldn't be a single public library in the United States who is a true librarian who would remove this book once learning of that, or who would opt not to buy this good book because of that passage. I mean, it's okay to not buy books that aren't well written, but Martha is a very good writer.
Now, I just want to bring up what the Phil Burris of the Ohio-based Citizens for Community Values, he does mention the fact that gay themes are much more prevalent in movies and on television and so forth. He says it's the job of librarians to censor and choose what's appropriate for kids. And he says the notion that an author would put gay fathers in a children's book proves that a gay agenda has creeped into American children's literature. What was your thought when you put in that family lifestyle?
I think I was thinking, I have friends with kids who are gay in State College and elsewhere. It seems just a fact of American life to me. Certainly, San Francisco would be probably the most extreme example. I'm sure there are many more there than many other places. I was thinking that here you are, you've got a child in the school system, say here or wherever, you're very likely your child's going to encounter a schoolmate maybe who's got two moms or two dads. It's not going to be all that strange, and here's perhaps, an entree into understanding that is like, oh, I see, this doesn't marginalize that child who's your classmate, or it doesn't marginalize the character in the book. It's just another fact of life.
The irony in all of this is when the LA Times picked up on the story, sales increased on Amazon.
Yeah, they really did. I talked to my agent last week about this, and she called it a blip, so I don't think it's exactly gone into bestseller status, and I haven't gotten any figures from the publisher yet. But yeah, they definitely increased, and I had this happy realization that you can buy an infinite number of copies of my book, but you can only fail to buy it once. So I do know I've gotten letters from people, including some very nice letters from some kids in Santa Monica being very supportive of the book. And so that's been gratifying as a result of the LA Times piece.
In fact, there are a number of gay themed, and as you say, the theme of your book wasn't a gay alternative lifestyle. But Mommy has, or Heather has two mommies, or Daddy's new roommate are fairly well-known titles in that particular area. What happened when those came out, Steve?
Oh, people went through the roof, because in this case, there was a clear indication that this was an advocacy position for those books, for that position, and it was also a decade and a half ago. So some people lost their jobs defending those books. By the way, that guy in Ohio, librarian's job isn't to censor anything. Yeah. It's to open up the world to kids, and that's what those books did. By the way, they're not the greatest books in the world. Heather Has Two Mommies and Daddy's New Roommate. They're not that well written. They're not that well illustrated, but they were the first of their kind, and so especially public libraries, again, were obligated to get them, because one of the things that I think librarians believe is that all children should be able to find themselves in some books. And that idea that, I mean, the idea to say that Martha's passing reference to this is advocating a particular lifestyle. What about the little kid that a parent's protecting who's sitting next to a child who has gay parents, who's living that life? It's just, I always find that amazing that we try to close down the art representing something that is right next to us in real life. And it's just a matter of making sure all kids feel like they're part of this larger culture. Every kid with a fat dad needs to find, a book with a fat dad. Kids of mixed race parentage need to find that. It doesn't have to be in all books, but it just has to be in some books.
Now, the American Library Association says that gay-themed books are frequently banned. What are among other very commonly banned books?
What's the name of Annie on My Mind? It was a novel, I think, that a person has won a lot of kudos for defending that theme. It's mostly something that you'll see much more at the young adult novel level. It is a little rare to see it in these beginning chapter books. But then again, I can't recall one, in answer to your question, that has that as the focus of the book. It is something that's more of a teenager thinking about their lifestyles and their gender preferences and kind of wrestling with that in this culture that is so still suppressive in spite of some of the inroads that we've made. Just a few years ago, Ellen DeGeneres lost her job because of coming out on a television show, but now look at how television's changed in a few years. In some ways, I think it needs to have someone, even though she didn't mean to be a pioneer necessarily with this, but in the interest of art, Martha has taken a step forward that we won't have to retreat from. I think that idea of being able to show other situations that are just normal and real and acceptable. We're not, this isn't an advocacy position for gay marriage. This is just an acknowledgement of the reality of that in the form of art.
Now, early on, a Pittsburgh-based or area mother who described herself as a Christian asked or demanded that this book be removed from her school library, saying again that it was inappropriate for young readers. What typically, maybe I should ask this of you, Steve, what typically does it cost a librarian, though, in times of energy and money to defend against something like that?
Oh, it's a very exhausting thing, especially when budgets are tight and we're trying to reach a lot of kids with a lot of books, and so it's tough, but at the same time, that's part of the professional standards that we have, and we'd rather not have to defend books, but I don't think that we would step aside from defending them in order to avoid it as much as we just think that we need a good policy in place. We need to have supporters who speak up, because often it's the lone negative voice that speaks up and everyone else runs for the hills to avoid controversy. But I learned long ago that if you ever have a board meeting, you've got to have some of the people on your side stay late, because the people who are complaining will always stay the latest, and then the vote happens. But so, you stand up to it one time and you make an impassioned argument and you show that, it's okay for you as a parent to decide what your kids read, but it's not okay for you as a parent to decide what the rest of the world reads. That's up to all the other parents. And so.
Now, how important is the librarian in terms of getting your books in circulation?
Oh, absolutely important. In fact, it's key, because with a hardcover book like this book, basically librarians are the people who buy the book, and that will determine whether the book goes into paperback and then whether it's really available to a lot of children. Most little kids aren't going to go to the store and spend $16, which is what this book's cost.
In hardcover?
In hardcover, but then when it comes out in paperback, it'll cost something like $4 or $5, which is something a child or a child's parent will buy as an impulse purchase.
Now, your publisher has asked you to produce the third installment in this series. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't tell you what I'm going to do as far as the gay characters, because partly I'm not sure, but also I want to keep the world, my readers, in suspense. My husband thought I should have them struck by lightning. Then I could keep them in the book and satisfy those who maybe don't like the gay characters. But I'm still working on that issue. But I'm not going to make Holly move. So.
Okay. Thanks so much for being with us. We've been talking with Martha Freeman and Steve Herb about the new book, The Trouble with Babies. For Take Note, I'm Patty Satalia.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.